Welcome to a new series that digs into the incredible beers and stories of the Trappist breweries. These are beers made within the walls of a Trappist monastery by or under the supervision of monks, and purely for the upkeep of the monk's way of life or good causes. Despite that, or maybe because of that, they have had a huge impact on how and what we drink today. Some of the best beers in the world come from Trappist breweries, but not a huge amount is known about them due to the limited access lay people have to them and a little bit of that classic Belgian brewing mysticism. We hope one day to visit as many as will let us in, but for now, we're going to be taking you through them one by one to give you the history, the impact, and of course the flavours that they have given the world, all from our own place of worship, the Brewdio. Okay, so we're back on our Trappist bullshit, and I'd say this is the big one.
It's the big boy. We've been leading up to this.
Yeah, pretty much. And this is the brewery that has, I think, the most impact on the other breweries. You know, both like in terms of training and helping, along with Chimay, but it also literally provides the yeast for Westvleteren, the last one we did. So Westmalle invented the Tripel, gave yeast to the best beer in the world, helped lots of other breweries set up and make great beer. And now we're going to tell their intricate, confusing story that means I'm afraid you're not going to have a beer, I think in real time in about half an hour. In YouTube time, maybe 5 minutes.
My hat's going on backwards, Johnny. I'm bedding in for this.
So Westmalle, up near Antwerp in northern Belgium, starts its history in 1793, when some French monks, always seems to be French monks fleeing France. I don't think for tax reasons. I think this was revolutionary France. Vive la France. Mm-hmm. They escape through France because the monasteries are under threat from the revolutionaries. So they go up through Belgium, up to Holland, because they're trying to get a boat to Canada to set up a monastery there. I guess because there were French expats maybe already in Canada by that point.
Quebec sort of vibes. Okay.
Anyway, there were no boats. No boats going to Canada, I guess because they couldn't stop off in France because of the war. But there was a bunch of rich people near Antwerp, including the Bishop of Antwerp, who was setting up well, it wasn't a Trappist monastery, it was the Lestrange, I guess, school of monasticism, of Catholicism, setting up a monastery there, and the bishop said, come set up this abbey with me. So they head down to northern Belgium, and that's the founding of Westmalle Abbey. Unfortunately, 6 weeks later, France invades Belgium. So they're forced to flee again. So they've probably just finished unpacking and they have to go to Germany.
Bad timing.
Yeah, which also not particularly friendly to Catholics back then, northern Germany, but they end up in Munster and they set up a monastery there, which grows, and more people from Belgium and from France come to join this monastery to the point where there's too many monks. Too many monks, the opposite problem of what we have today. So 12 monks head back to Westmalle, which I think is now built. It's now a functioning abbey. And then Napoleon invades.
They can't catch a break, these guys.
They cannot catch a break. So Napoleon comes along, closes down all the monasteries. And Napoleon, well, probably not him, his people sell it off to locals, sell the monastery off. Luckily to people that were sympathetic to the monks' cause. So they just hold on to it until it's only a couple of years later that Napoleon is deposed, goes in exile to, I don't know,
a little island,
nice beach or somewhere.
Yeah.
And they come back, and then Westmalle starts to be like, okay, guys, I think this time, everything's going to be fine. So things are better, but it's not quite a monastery at this point. So the Dutch are currently ruling this area of Belgium. Belgium isn't independent yet as a country, and they say you can have a monastery, but only if you're farming the local land, because poverty was rife, the soil was not fertile, it was really, really hard work. So they said, so long as you're like contributing, we'll let you live whatever the weird life that you want to lead. You can just live that. So it doesn't actually become a monastery until about 1833, like 20 years later. Wow. When they write to the Pope and they go, if we join the Trappist movement, which was, I guess, signed off by the Pope, the Lestrange stuff was too weird even for the Catholics. If we join the Trappist movement, could we join and be officially recognised as an abbey? And the Pope goes, "Si? Is that Italian for yes?" So they have to actually become a little bit more flexible in their religious beliefs to join it. And one of those things is that they're now allowed to drink beer. And off the back of that, because Trappists have to work, because they weren't just taking sneaky swigs like you probably are while we're filming this. Once they were actually drinking enough beer to warrant it, they founded their own brewery. So that happens in the 1830s, that brewing starts on the site of Westmalle, but just purely for the monks. So basically like a table beer, like 1, maybe 2%, liquid bread, there for fasting, there for breakfast, there to keep them going. I reckon I'm going to let us crack the first beer now.
Thank God. It's deliverance from God.
So these are tough monks, hey?
Yeah, yeah, but you know what? If monking was easy, anyone would be a monk, right? I think.
Would they?
Yeah, I think well, it's you can live there for free, can't you?
Would you be a monk?
No, I wouldn't.
Right, okay. So the table beer that they were brewing purely for them is described in Jeff Vandenstein's book, which has been the Bible for this entire series. An amazing, amazing book. So much research has gone into this. But he describes the beer as dark and sweet. So not quite what we're drinking here, which is what the monks drink today. What are you getting?
If I was a working monk, this is the kind of beer I'd want to be drinking
okay,
on a daily basis. I think it's not like overpowering or anything. It's not super duper strong. Is it stronger than a table beer? It tastes a bit stronger.
It's 5.5, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
like double the strength of a table beer.
It's a big table beer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a big old table beer. And again, in Jeff's book, when he does all the history and then he talks about the beers and he says it's got a surprising amount of flavour for a low alcohol beer. And you're like, Jeff,
it's not low alcohol, mate.
Only in Belgium would you say that phrase. It's 5.5%. It's got a big, bold yeastiness, right? It's got banana, like loads of banana, not a lot of clove or spiciness or pear or anything like that. It's banana and grassy banana, which I guess doesn't sound appetizing, but it smells really, really good.
No, it smells great, and it's like super fresh. It's crisp.
Very crisp and dry.
Crisp and dry, but yeah, like you say, that banana-y thing, and a slight sort of herbal kind of note.
Yeah, yeah, definite kind of herbal kick to it. So this is what the monks will actually drink. It's what you can drink in the refectory, and it is, for want of a better phrase, and I think this is actually a phrase that some breweries have used. It's like a session triple, which I hate the idea of.
Right. Yeah.
But it's just a session blonde that's based on the same yeast, same hop. So all of the beers that we're going to drink use the same yeast. Which is the Westmalle yeast, which is very famous and very recognisable because it is all banana. To me, at least, it's all banana. These two will have candy sugar in, which doesn't reduce flavour or anything. But what it means is you can achieve a higher alcohol without having to use more malt, which can make it stickier, heavier, all that kind of stuff. They all use SARS, I think for bittering, like for boil additions, so you get bitterness and spiciness from the SARS, and then Styrian Goldings, which will give you sort of the aromas. It's also the hop that's used in like Timothy Taylor's and stuff. So it's got a kind of recognisable kind of spicy character to it. And then they're all bottle conditioned as well. So it's sort of, certainly these are one beer, almost separate guiles, and this one's slightly different. But actually, most of the money that was coming in was coming from the farming and from making wine.
Wine, you say?
So Westmalle was making wine for quite nearly a century. Wine was a big income for them, not the beer.
Not the beer.
It won a lot of awards for them as
way.
well. So it was supposedly very, very good wine. But that all died out on the vine, as it were, when World War I broke out. So nearly a century after they start brewing. And in that time, they have expanded the brewery a little bit, and they have started actually selling the beer.
Yeah.
And they expand the brewery just before the 1900s, 1897, I think. They expand the brewery and start really pushing it out. And back then they were brewing, they had their table beer, which was brewed occasionally for the monks. They had a strong dark, and they had a cheaper, it's not made clear like how expensive or what kind of beer it really was, but a white beer. So they had a double and a white and a table beer.
Nice.
Which kind of represents the trinity that we have here, although the recipes are going to shift quite a bit. So World War I, they tear out the vines. Actually, the bell tower is exploded so that it can't be like a watchtower for the Germans.
Wow.
A couple of, I think, Dutch monks remain because they were neutral, whereas all the French monks have to flee again because the Germans would not have been pleased to meet them.
Did the monks take down the tower themselves?
I don't know whether we can say that we have like explosive monks.
Did they have
I don't think
artillery
we can add
monks?
that artillery monks. I don't think we can add that to the list of monks we've encountered, but we're still going to. So yeah, they explode their own bell tower. Most of them flee, but some Dutch monks who are neutral remain and look after it. But the brewery is entirely torn out. When the war ends, they're given money for that. They're given reparations.
Yeah.
So they build a new brewery. And because they desperately need money, and in fact this is a trend with Westmalle, every time they or someone else is in need, they expand the brewery to pay, to raise the money. So then we get to the 1930s, and this is where the Westmalle we know appears, right? So in early 1930s, about 1933, they decide to expand the brew house, and it opens in 1934. And to celebrate that, they brew this beer for the first time. So it's loosely based on the blonde that they were brewing before, but it's amped up to about 9.5%, well, to 9.5%. And actually, the recipe that they come up with then isn't the same as what we're drinking now. That comes in 1956 when they add extra hops to make it a slightly hoppy blonde. So the double, the only beer here available on draft. So Westmalle make 120,000 hectolitres a year, which would make them one of the biggest breweries in the UK.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. And as a result, you know, they are a Trappist brewery, but all they have is 3 monks on the board. Everything else is lay people. Which I don't think it waters down the Trappist sort of label, but it's certainly not say what's happening at Westvleteren, you know? It's a
Industrious
very
monks.
Yeah, industrial monks, yeah. But not in like 9 Inch Nails way, more like a
No.
YMCA steel.
In a like a sort of yeah.
Yeah, so this is the double, 7%.
Oh yeah, banana again.
So weirdly, that was overripe banana.
Toffee
this
banana.
is slightly green. Oh, you're getting
Well, like
banoffee.
Banoffee a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, but a slightly green banana banoffee.
Green banana.
Arguing
banoffee.
about the colour of banana and a banoffee.
Yeah.
And you definitely get a kind of brown sugar, candied creme brulee top kind of crystallised sugar thing,
Big time.
which will be coming from the malt and the candy sugar and everything else that's going on in this beer. It smells really wonderful and fruity and datey,
Big time.
figgy. It's really nicely balanced. When it's really fresh, this is actually pushing the end of its life, but when it's really fresh, it has quite a bitter, hoppy end, a little bit like the Westvleteren one.
Right, yeah.
This one's rounded out, and it's all about that yeasty character.
Yeah, big time.
Which I think is just really wonderful with the dark malts. I love Dunkelweizens as well. I love how that really banana-y kind of character plays with the darkiness in that kind of banoffee kind of way.
Do you don't want to eat a banoffee pie with this right now?
Oh my god, it'd be sensory overload in the absolute
Amazing.
best way.
It'd be incredible.
Yeah. But I would consider this the second best double in the world, just behind Westvleteren's, which I think is their best beer. And this one, invented start of the 20th century. So one of the earlier, much earlier than this one, than the Tripel. But, you know, beautiful. And somehow it feels modern, which I guess could only happen in Belgium again. You could only call this weak in Belgium, and you can only call this modern in Belgium as well. It's an absolutely stunning beer.
There's something to do with something being a classic, that it's timeless, in a way, right? So it's always modern.
So there's kind of two stories as to how this beer came about. Both of them could be true, and both of them could be nonsense. But the most likely official story is that this was brewed to celebrate the opening of the new brewery in 1934.
Yep.
The other story I've heard is that at least the recipe of this was inspired by the sort of the real rise in continental Europe of kegged lager. If that's the case, swing and a fucking miss, Belgian monks, because it's 9.5%.
Yeah.
Not like sub 5.
No.
The other reason I doubt that is because A, those beers have been around for a long time already, particularly in Germany, which is not far. And B, we know that they had a blonde already, possibly vaguely close to that. So it's probably just like, oh, we'll just make a big version of that. You know, like when a modern brewery has a double IPA that's famous, they go, well, we'll do a triple IPA.
We'll do that, but we'll make it bigger and better.
Yeah, so I think that's more likely the origins of it. But it's kind of fun to think that the Belgians went, we could make a lager, and then they make this. So yeah, this is the first triple in the world, which is why it's called the mother of triples. And between this and Duvel, you know, that inspired most of the beer that's brewed and drunk in Belgium.
Amazing.
These two beers. So interestingly, Westmalle is the only Trappist Brewery I have toured.
Is it really?
Yeah, so I have been inside the walls,
Huh.
not of the actual monastery itself.
No.
That's not for lay people, but the actual brewery. So I've seen it in its glory, and like the actual brew house itself is. It's definitely not small, but it's nothing on the scale of say like Budvar or Pilsner Urquell or
Right.
Polana, these other huge breweries that we've
But
been
the
to.
output's huge.
But the output, I mean, you look at like the warm room where these beers are all stored for about 2 weeks while they condition, or a bit longer for the kegs.
Yeah.
Or you look at the conditioning, it's absolutely massive, and that is because those are the sort of the sticking points. You know, that's
Yeah.
where the capacity is limited, because all of these beer, well, I assume all of these beers, maybe not this one, they're all lagered for months. So they are filtered, but they're also lagered. And in fact, I don't know whether it's still true anymore, but there were still horizontal fermentation tanks. So it was all done horizontally when I was there in 2016. But I believe they were slowly moving to conicals. But still, it's lagered. So these beers take a long time to make. I think it's 9 weeks. And it's only 5 or 6 days of fermentation to get to 9.5.
Wow.
And then the rest is lagering and bottle conditioning. So it's a beautiful, massive brewery, but most of it is sort of cellar side rather than brewery side. So yeah, this is essentially a lagered triple, and a lot of them are in Belgium. A lot of them are sort of lagered, cold conditioned. But when we were there, we got to taste pre-lagering and post-lagering. So what I would describe as quite hot Westmalle, really quite boozy, quite sedimenty. Had a real yeast bite to it and quite a lot of fennel, and it's dialed back to
That's
what this
interesting.
is.
Yeah, right. Wow.
And it's banana and brioche and clove.
It's a bouncy castle banana fest. Just
It's a banana boat of a beer.
Ah, dude, it's so banana-y and creamy and yeah.
And it's got a little bit of kind of the tiniest bit of like nail polishy, super aromatic kind of quality to it. But it's alluring and it's sweet.
Yeah.
And it's hoppy, you know?
It is hoppy,
Got a big finish to it.
Yeah.
Which is both from big carbonation, a big kind of boozy sweetness at 9.5, but then cut through by that kind of hot bitterness. It is. I did a whole video about the difference between structured and balanced, and it is the ultimate structured beer, because this is not a balanced beer. It's all out banana, but when you drink it and you swallow and you finish, you don't go, that was out of balance, because it's structured in a way that's got bitterness. It kind of does like it's the opposite of a bell curve, a dip curve. It's got a dip curve in it.
It's great.
So it sort of fades away and then comes back big at the finish. And for me, it's one of the best beers in the world. And I would genuinely say during my blind taste test, you lose your palate's smashed. You lose your context. You by the end of it, you're just looking for the biggest, boldest, silliest kind of thing. Not on purpose. Just your palate is like, for this to be different. That's what it wants. And so if I still reached for a triple, I'd still always reach for the Westmalle, even though it's 60, 70,000 hectolitres.
It doesn't matter, does it? When it's that quality.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, there's still the processes are still there. Most of that, most of the facility is lagering, and kind of cellaring and all the rest of it. That's not something that they're rushing or industrializing to shortcut.
Yeah.
Essentially, it sounds like they're still keeping the old ways.
Again, a great quote in the book is literally quoting a monk, and the monk says, like, commercial breweries will invest outwards, right? They'll buy tap rooms, they'll expand production, they'll work on marketing, all this kind of stuff. And he said, we invest inwards. So everything they do is trying to make that one beer better. And it's a little bit of a truism. Like, what brewery isn't trying to make their beer... Well, there are some breweries that probably aren't trying to make their beer better. But what it means is they've been at 120,000 hectolitres since... Like, we're talking decades and decades.
Yeah.
And so every bit of profit they've made, if it hasn't gone to the monks' way of life or good causes, it's been on improving the beer, making the beer more...
Dialing it in.
Efficient. They've been dealing with their waste management, so all of their water is filtered... their wastewater is all filtered right down to pure water that goes into a chalk stream, I think, that's going past. And the sediment is all sprayed on the fields as fertiliser. And they've been doing that for decades.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything is about being a better 120,000 hectolitre brewery rather than being a bigger than 120. And, you know, in a world of endlessly skyrocketing inflation and political struggles, commercial breweries can't stand still. They have to grow. So the last thing to say about Westmalle is that in all of the research that I've done, them and Shimei are just so generous with the help that they give all of the other breweries.
Yeah.
So, you know, the whole Trappist movement, which is this remarkable thing that shouldn't really exist, is down to the connections between these people in these monasteries, and in particular between Westmalle and the people that they've helped along the way. So this episode shouldn't just be a celebration of Westmalle; it should be a celebration of all that they've done for the other breweries. And their success has bred success for other monasteries, keeping that way of life going and keeping us with utterly stunning beer that wouldn't be made otherwise.
I guess from their perspective, they're a little bit more altruistic, right? So they want to support other people that want to live like them and live their sort of ethos of life. So whereas, you know, a lot of breweries might keep all the secrets, they're sharing the processes, they're sharing the yeast, they're sharing everything that's made them a success with their small community of like-minded people.
Yeah. And that must be, well, I mean, initially I used to think it was like, that was super important because the way of life is dying out. But it feels like, certainly with Westmalle's history, it's been dying out since the early 1800s.
Yeah.
And there is an incredible resolve to these, you know, incredibly zealous religious people that just keeps them going. And as far as we're concerned as beer geeks, that's wonderful news.
Keep on trooping, lads.
Keep on monking. Keep on monking.
Keep on monking.